What's up, Trunk Slammers? It is Spicy Monday, and I have a question for you. Do you have any clue how fast you can actually recover your client from any sort of downtime, incident, or data loss? Basically, do you know if your RTO is a lie? Do you even have an RTO? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it almost certainly is. It may not entirely be your fault. Some blame gets pushed definitely towards vendors and the language our industry has been using around this concept in backups, BCDR, security, hardware, warranties, insurance, all of it. The entire industry has been incredibly manipulative and predatory over the last 15 years with this language. So you're not entirely at fault, MSPs. But given that out, do you actually have an RTO? Do you actually know you can deliver on it? And if you're sitting at the other end of this camera nodding and saying, I do have an RTO, Dean, and I know we can deliver on it, I think you're full of shit. So we're going to talk about why. So real quick, I just want to explain what RTO and RPO is for those that may not know. RTO is recovery time objective. It is how long will it take to return whatever the system is that I have my RTO stipulated around back to functionality, which is different from RPO, which is the recovery point objective. How far back in time or to what point can I recover from or to? And for the sake of this video, I'm going to assume that if you're an MSP, you already have RPO handled. Whether you have it written down or not, or have a good policy, I could beat you up on another video, but a child with their parents' Apple account can handle a proper RPO with Time Machine. You can do the same thing with Windows backup. So you can do the same thing with fucking tapes. So if you at least are not handling RPO right now, you probably should fire all your staff, switch RMMs, and go out of business today. Because that, at this point in 2025, RPO shouldn't even be a problem for any of you. RTO itself, the thing that really riles me up about this is it's just this dirty little secret in our industry that we just kind of sweep under the fucking rug. We sort of make ourselves feel good by talking about, well, we occasionally do test restores or run that plan, which is okay. That's some of an answer, except most of you don't. When you do, you're not doing it under actual conditions. You're doing it under ideal conditions, and you're not doing it frequently enough to actually build any sort of literal or figurative muscle memory for how to respond. Basically, this entire industry does not have any repeatable, honest, and ethical way to actually stand by any form of an RTO. Now, I mentioned earlier that vendors are partially at fault here, and by proxy and from years of hearing it from vendors, now MSPs are at fault as well. We use a lot of language in this space around RTO that I really hate. In case anyone hearing me say any of this thinks or assumes I'm talking about a particular vendor, I'm not. I've never met any vendor that is totally off the hook from using this language, nor have I ever met any MSP, including my MSP, that's off the hook for using this language. We are all guilty. Every one of us. The first one that really drives me crazy is the instant recovery. It is really the ultimate lie. What MSPs and vendors both tend to say with our solution, you'll get instant recovery of your data. What it really means is we can spin up a virtual machine on our appliance in minutes, but only if everything is perfect, your data set isn't massive, and we don't encounter any issues, which is an awful lot of ands, buts, ors, and exclusions to that statement. In reality, the term instant is really just a marketing buzzword. Even best case scenarios, instant often translates to hours or more, especially if you include diagnosing the issue, booting up systems, or handling dependencies. And our clients, they imagine instant meaning no downtime at all. And when that process drags, which of course it will, they're furious. And I want to put a pin here because I mentioned that even in a best case scenario, if we include all the steps, it's not instant. And boy, isn't that a fucking part of this we don't talk about ever. Let's pretend you are a good MSP. Let's pretend that you do frequently run tests of these platforms. They are set up and they are aligned well so that once you start the process, you do have a pretty predictable idea because you have one vertical of clients that are all set up exactly the same. And so you are the one MSP in my audience who can really stand there and say, Dean, I know our RTO and we hit it 95% of the time. All right, buddy. Well, then let me still point out why words like instant are an immediate failure. That whole RTO thing doesn't kick in until all these other things have happened. First, we need time to notice something has gone wrong or be told about it. Then we need time to process what we were told, triage, troubleshoot it, and make sure that it's true. Then we need to react to that information, which usually means figuring out, what's next. Then we need to notify internally or to the client what's happening. Then we have to figure out what the plan is. And if you do have a plan, the figuring out the plan is finding it and getting it, opening it, figuring out where to start. Then we have to communicate that plan to everybody. Then we have to get permission usually or approvals to execute the plan. And only then, under ideal conditions, can that actual recovery process start. And even then, it probably doesn't, because we need to loop in materials, vendors, warranties, all this other shit. And everything I just described at an MSP that is really, really, really dialed in is still going to take probably at least an hour. And why an hour? Why not 30 minutes or 15 minutes? Because this industry staffs for capacity, not availability, which means that when you have an incident like this, you don't typically have people at a high-end MSP, never mind a shit-tier MSP, sitting around doing nothing, waiting to execute the plan. It's not a fire station where the fire people are sitting there waiting for the bell and jump in their outfits in 2 seconds and are out the door. They're already fighting other fires. That's how MSPs work. This whole thing's even predicated on us having the right person able to work through this when we first are notified about it, which you don't. Therefore punching a giant ass fucking hole in anybody's RTO that uses any language that implies it's quick. And then that brings us to some of the other versions of this, like quick recovery, quick by whose standards. MSPs and vendors usually say we can recover your systems quickly in the event of downtime. But what we really mean is we hope we can recover your systems faster than you lose patience. Without a specific time frame, quickly is meaningless. And with a specific time frame, quickly is meaningless because different verticals, different industries interpret that differently. How about same day? Same day is great because you have to be a relatively mature organization or understand your tools to say this. And we all say this when we offer those pro service level warranties on critical gear that have same day parts or same day support. Right? So that's when we all understand and would never utter same day unless we really knew what we were doing. I'll take that bait. So we generally say with same day, we guarantee same day recovery for critical systems, which really means if a disaster happens at 8 a.m., we'll work until midnight to get your systems back. What if it happens at 4 p.m.? Good luck until tomorrow. Same day feels reassuring, but it's incredibly vague. Does it mean all systems will be back online by the end of the day, just the critical ones? How does same day work if the disaster happens off hours? And for all those of you that work through the night when something like this happens, because you are really treating same day as we were told about it and we're going to start fixing it now, we've got whatever, 12-hour clock to do it. All right. So given that I know your MSP is not charging the client probably in this scenario for 24/7 follow the sun managed services, you're probably only charging for 8 to 5. What the fuck does same day mean when it does happen at 4 p.m. and you do work all night? Especially when you go to the client in the morning, really proud of yourself like Superman after he saves Metropolis, and you know that you're not going to get the reception that Superman gets in the comics. You're going to get the reception Superman should get, which is what the fuck? You just caused billions of dollars of damage, and now I can't get to work tomorrow because you threw my car at some alien. What the fuck, dude? That's how the client is going to feel about you. Were you going to send him a bill for the overages? Really? Good luck keeping that relationship. That's a real net promotion right there. And if you go, oh no, I charge for this. No, you fucking don't. I worked at an MSP that had 24-hour follow the sun clock and pricing, and we still didn't charge enough to actually do this 24/7. Our entire industry doesn't charge enough to do this 24/7 because the whole thing is one of those giant ass-clenching risk things that we just hope doesn't actually happen during those times. This is my favorite one on the entire list, because this one only applies to those people, either MSPs or clients, who shop exclusively from the Gartner Magic Quadrant because they think that is the premier way to CTO, vCISO, or vCIO. You know the people I'm talking about. It's the same people that would rent a Rolls Royce to show up to their prom to pretend to be rich in. You're not fooling anybody. But near zero RTO. So what do the vendors, the MSPs, say in this little corner of the market? We offer near zero RTO with our solution. What does it really mean? We can restore critical services within minutes, but only if you've bought our premium hardware and cloud package, have redundant infrastructure, and paid for the top tier SLA. So what's the reality? Near zero is an empty promise without context. For many SMBs, the time to download backups, reconfigure systems, test functionality, or you to get started means it is impossible for it to be near zero. So the client expects everything will be back online in seconds, and they're blindsided when it takes hours. And for normal MSPs that do not sell or shop out of the Gartner quadrant, your version of this, how many times have we done something like high availability internet, SD-WAN, failover anything, always instantaneous and unnoticeable? No, sometimes it is, but it's not always. And how frustrating is that for us? How frustrating is that for us when it happens to us at our office? Never mind when it happens to our client. That's our poor person's version of near zero, and you already understand that's not something you can really guarantee. So then we get to the one which, as an operations professional, I kind of like the best, but it's still completely full of shit. It's the one where we say, we'll have you back up and running in no time. That's the vendor, the MSP, says if disaster strikes, we'll have you back up and running in no time. We see this actually in other industries as well that aren't even our industry at all. It is a wonderful buzzword because operations people like me love shit like this where I'm not being actually held to something. What does it really mean? We'll work as fast as we can, but we are not going to commit to a timeline. I love that, but it's still bullshit to say it to someone because it's a cop-out to avoid accountability. It's why I like it. No time is a comforting abstraction that means nothing when your client systems are still down 3 hours later. Everything we've talked about, the client is not happy. The client is not a net promoter. The client is not joyous with any of these things we've talked about. And I will point out, this language isn't exclusive to things around recovery. It's the same thing where we have statements like your business will be protected, right? How many different solutions, especially on the security side of the house, say that? It's so nebulous. You know, our solution ensures that your business is protected from downtime, threats, the latest 0 day, however we're gonna say it. Your fucking UPSs, that, you know, your equipment is protected from surges up to $250,000. This wonderful term we love to use because it feels warm and fuzzy. But what does it really mean? It means that your shit is technically there, but how fast we can recover or what we can actually protect you from, that is a different story. If we bring it back to backups, it conflates backups exist with backups are usable. And that's such a problem. That goes back to RPO versus RTO. RPO, backups exist. I believe you. Right? I said it earlier. If your backups don't exist and you're an MSP in 2025, go out of business. You're in the wrong industry. Just get out. It's too easy to do now. Your nephew can do it. That's right, folks. Nephew tech, the one area your nephew can parody you with. Your backups exist. But are they usable? And while I'm on it, I'll give a couple other quick examples because it's not just backups and things like that. This whole concept applies to really any sort of the RTO chain. What if you have a hardware failure in a critical system? You sold one of those same-day parts warranties. Okay, how's that work? How do you get that? Who does it? Who installs it? What do you need to do? Do you have any guarantee or control over that? What about an email outage? How about end-user device recovery? You know, when that important user, their device breaks, and whether you have a spare or not on hand because you're that cool, like, what about the time to get them functional and working on that thing? What if they're somewhere else? What if they're on a trip? How about when your VoIP system goes down? Because that's never happened to anybody in any VoIP provider. Are you prepared to reroute calls to a temporary phone number or mobile device? How many of us don't even know how to do that? Cloud application outages, power or internet outage, line of business app failures, security incidents, not even the spooky ones, printer or peripheral failures in production environments, especially if there's OT involved. A lot of these are things that at face value, there are tools and ways to mitigate, right? There are ways for us to hopefully avoid having to actually do a recovery, which is a big part of what we do in this space. But once we actually do have to do a recovery, how quickly can you do it? How quickly do you have the people available to do it? How quickly will all the variables that crop up for all those things I mentioned get in the way, because all of these things have variables you can't control. Some of that's very obvious. If somebody hits a telephone pole and the business loses power, or Microsoft's down for the whole world, that's very obvious. It doesn't mean you're off the hook, and it doesn't mean that your client is happy with you. And I think that's the part we miss. We miss that when the cause for whatever we need the RTO for is obvious and understood. Yes, a client may give you some grace in that they understand you did not cause Microsoft to go down, or you did not hit the telephone pole. And they also understand that you yourself have limited to no ability to fix those things. But they're still looking at you and saying, well, you knew this was possible, right? And you are an IT professional. Surely you had something in your bag of fucking tricks. You didn't? And then when you come back and either tell them it was out of scope or not in the contract, or, hey, we talked about this that one time and you agreed to it. Well, that's an Uno reverse card with a middle finger drawn on it. Like, it doesn't matter if you're technically correct. How often are you talking about that? How often are you getting them to understand what their risk profile is? Dear God, my friends, how often do we just avoid this entire conversation as an industry? I know we do, because there's so much content and effort trying to train people how to be VCAOs and VCSOs right now, because no one in the space wants to fucking talk about this shit. That's how bad it is. The point of the video today is not to criticize any one of you for this. We're all guilty of it. I am guilty of it. There is no one in this industry who is innocent, who is better than this. And if anyone gets on a pedestal and say they are above all of this, they're lying, or they don't know they're lying to you. No one in our industry is better than this. It is an endemic issue. We have to start by getting rid of the marketing language within the channel first. We have to start speaking honestly about these things. We have to start getting good at honestly setting expectations and painting real pictures about how probably not wonderful it's actually going to be. That does mean that all of my vendor friends, you have to stop cherry picking from your ideal or best in class metrics to hold up when whatever your solution is, backup, MDR, SOC, SIEM, any of that shit. All the numbers that we hold up that make it seem like under ideal conditions, your product crushes it. I'm sure it does, but none of us actually operate under ideal conditions. And unless you are, as a vendor, going to die on a hill that the only way you let MSPs buy from you is if they're taught and forced to use your ideal conditions, then you're part of the problem, my friends. MSPs, you got to get better at having these conversations with your clients, and you got to stop sweeping it under the rug because you're uncomfortable to have it. If it's worth anything to you, I will tell you this. A long time ago in a previous job, I used to cut holes in people's walls to hang, hundreds of thousands of dollars of electronics. And that is, of course, especially in New England where I live, that is a giant fucking mystery box, because you got a 300-year-old house. You have no idea what's behind the wall. And no $350 stud finder is going to do anything except beep when it goes past me. It's not going to do you any good. So there is no way to be sure that what someone has paid you an immense amount of money to do is going to be achievable, and that the damage you've caused finding that out is even repairable. Yeah. How does that industry still stay in business? In fact, how do any of those industries still stay in business? It's very simple. You don't bullshit the customer. It's that easy. You have an open and honest conversation about all of the risks. You let them know what your goals are. You let them know what the plan is, provided that either nothing bad happens or you're able to overcome the bad things. And you let them know what some of those bad things are that could happen, and specifically what you will do when they come together, because you are not winging it. So my MSP friends, start having that conversation with your clients. Stop winging this. Stop sweeping it under the rug. And yes, you are winging it. The whole industry is winging it. We need to get better at doing this. Be honest with your client. Be frequent in your communication with your client. Give them endless opportunities to refuse things that will mitigate or otherwise reduce the time to recover. Let them say no once a month. Don't even wait for a QBR. Let them say no once a month to these things. Send them a report monthly. Whatever it takes. It's the only way it's going to improve. And then, and this is super important, when shit hits the fan, if you have an established plan, you stick to it. Stop over delivering. Because when you over deliver MSPs, you do so inconsistently. And then you make this even more confusing for your clients. If you do, back to that same day thing, if you do have a same day setup, then whatever the end of the day is, you stop and you do not just continue working through the night. Even though you think the client's going to think you're a hero and what it takes, you're over delivering. It adds no value. The client will not be proud of you. And you have now set up a standard that same day means 24 hours for no additional money. And you will always be able to pull off a miracle, which you know you cannot guarantee. That's right. The other side to this is the entire industry calming down and lowering standards to a level that we can consistently execute at so that we're not full of shit. What's the point of overpromising all the time if half the time we're full of shit and the other half the time we're over-delivering and burning everyone out to maybe hit a goal that the client thinks that we should have hit 10 hours ago? It's not productive. It's not helpful. It's not teaching SMBs to manage risk. It's certainly not helping your MSP, and it's not helping vendors, because ultimately, once we all realize that whatever your vendor horseshit is doesn't actually do what was advertised on the box perfectly, we will switch to another vendor. That's why MSPs do that. Vendors, if you didn't know why MSPs constantly switch vendors all the fucking time, this is a big part of why. Because you promise things that aren't really doable unless somebody's doing it under ideal conditions in a lab. Maybe stop fucking saying that, and then people will be more loyal to you. That's still not solving the problem, but it's better. So my friends, on this spiciest of Mondays, remember, our clients expect results and outcomes, not excuses. An RTO is a yardstick by which those results are judged. It is how they are judged. And I will tell you that I will leave you with a parting thought. What is the penultimate go out of business worst case scenario? That terrible B word, the breach, when one, or even worse, all of your clients get totally fucked because something awful happens. And in those situations, almost certainly you're going to go out of business. Whether you have cyber insurance or anything else, you are screwed. Wouldn't you rather, if you're going down, wouldn't you rather go down as the MSP that had a well-defined RTO that stuck to it and delivered on it and got people back up and running exactly when you told them they would? I mean, if I was your client and I got breached, I don't know, after I got over the emotions of whose fault it was and why, definitely want to continue a relationship with somebody who met their contractual obligation to me in repairing it over somebody who couldn't even get that right either.